Morning, Beth.
Good morning, Beth. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing great, thanks.
Good, good. Well, hi, everyone, and welcome to our very first episode of Between Two Beths. I'm Beth Meek, and you can just call me Beth. And I am a champion for the midlife caregiver. I help her renew her energy by redefining self-care and rather than doing more. So, Beth, why don't you introduce yourself?
Okay, and I am Beth Y. And yes, we really do share the same name. Quite the coincidence. And I work with widowed people to move from existing to fully living life again. I call it when you go through the deep grief, right? And you emerge and the fog starts to lift.
Yeah.
And then you start thinking about now what? How do I live the rest of my life?
Yeah, that's amazing. That's awesome. We created this series because life has its way of changing us, as Beth just mentioned, and as a caregiver, having been a caregiver twice, I know as well, reshaping, changing, sometimes through caregiving, sometimes through loss, sometimes through just the stuff that happens during midlife. And we know stuff happens during midlife, right?
Absolutely. And even though these experiences are common, they're always not talked about openly. Um, a lot of women walk through them feeling isolated, overwhelmed, unsure of what comes next. Um, Everybody's journey is different, and everybody's journey is uniquely their own.
Yes, absolutely. So, Between Two Beths is our space to have real life conversations, honest conversations about caregiving, grief, loss, identity, starting over, and everything in between, because there's no borders around these experiences.
Yeah, there's no borders and there's no timelines. Um,
Exactly.
and we're not talking as experts talking at you, but as two women who've lived these seasons and know what it's like to carry a lot in your heart. I myself am a widow. My husband passed away on my birthday 6 years ago. Uh, 2 weeks later, it was Thanksgiving, and then a month later, Christmas, and then COVID hit for 2 years. So um, you are not alone out there by any means, and sometimes sharing your story is helpful and healing for others.
Absolutely. And that is our hope for these conversations, that they will help you feel seen and help you understand and know that you're not alone. It's lonely and isolating being in either of these places, caregiving and or having lost a loved one, and especially around the holidays. But that's why we're getting together to chat about these difficult things because we want you to feel supported and less alone. And especially, like I said, during the holidays.
Yeah, I was thinking about this earlier. Um, I am I came to the conclusion earlier this week that I'm really not a fan of the holidays. Again, like I said, the timing with me was such, and this is a time of year. Holidays are hard on people for lots of different reasons. Okay, and I know that for me, it's a tough time of year. It's one I struggle with. So today we're starting with this big one: holiday traditions, how they change, what they mean now, and how we can honor the past while giving ourselves permission to create something new. I know as a we who became a me, many of my traditions have changed.
Absolutely. They really do. And through the caregiving experience seasons, I call them, um, traditions and holidays are a part of that, sometimes not. And so, whatever you're doing in the caregiving season during the holidays, you kind of just get thrown into it all. So why don't we just jump right in, Beth?
Sure. All right, so there's a couple ways that we can look at this. We have traditions, we can honor traditions. Um, sometimes as I said, we had lots of traditions that we did together with that sometimes don't always apply anymore. But there are some things I do to honor my husband. And that can be something like, cooking his favorite dish as just, a way of sharing something that was special to us.
Yeah.
Um, and that can offer comfort and connection.
Yeah. Boy, I can see that. And when during the caregiving season, during traditions like that, holidays and traditions, sometimes traditions for the caregiver, I find actually add a weight to the holidays that you maybe don't ordinarily feel. And yet the holidays add so much extra stuff right to your plate. As women, we take on a lot during life, but decorating and baking and cooking more meals, you're likely having more guests and wrapping and shopping and things like that. For the caregiver, that's just extra weight that
Yeah.
they really don't need. So honoring traditions is one thing, and helping your continue doing the things that you want to do, but then understanding that those shifts are necessary in order to keep going, right? Keep
Yeah.
living, right?
I firmly believe, and I tell my clients as they navigate these seasons of change, um, honor what feels right for you. Okay, so I don't really anymore get a whole lot of joy out of the holidays. But what I do is, and I know that's within me. Okay, and so I recognize that, I accept that about myself. I don't feel guilty about it. But I've also decided to release feeling obligated to do things. If it doesn't feel good for me and it doesn't make me happy, I'm not engaging anymore. And so the shift for me in some cases has been making it better for others. So after my husband passed away, I recognized that my first holiday was not going to be great. But what I did recognize was that I could make myself feel better about it by doing something kind for others. And so I hosted a Christmas Eve dinner for my neighbors who were also home alone on Christmas Eve, waiting to go celebrate with others. And we had a great time.
Nice.
It's about doing and honoring what works for you and not feeling the pressure to do anything less or anything more.
Yeah, that's such an important point because that goes right into the starting of new traditions, the honoring traditions just by starting new ones. And as a caregiver, I remember I spent a holiday with my mom in the hospital and the rest of my family. And we actually were in my mom's facility, which we wouldn't ordinarily have been to celebrate Christmas. We were in a conference room. We had brought gifts, we had brought our meal and things like that. So we didn't start a tradition, but we were honoring a tradition to be together, to have the gifts, to have the meal and things like that. In the way we were able to, you talk about traditions not serving you. The regular tradition didn't serve us that year. We weren't able to do that. So at times your holiday will look different when you're caregiving, but that's okay. And what you might come to is that you start a new tradition from that, or you realize what's really important to you during the holiday season by doing something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I recognize too, as I said, I don't get a whole lot of joy out of the holidays
Yeah,
anymore. Um, many of my traditions kind of, I mean, when you lose your person, you lose a lot of your traditions that go with that.
absolutely.
Um, but I've kind of, I call it like the shift. Um, in that some of the traditions, like my husband and I, we lived outside the Washington, D.C. area. And of course, there was the national tree and the state trees. Um, downtown, uh, every, every, can we pause?
Sure.
Hey, everyone, we're back. Welcome to live recording. and live streaming. My friend stopped by unexpectedly. I'd been under the weather, and so she was bringing me something to calm my tummy, which was very kind of her.
Yes.
But anyway, so if I resume where I was talking about going to the national tree and the state
Yes.
trees downtown DC. And my husband and I used to do it every year, almost always on Christmas Eve, sometimes not, but mostly on Christmas Eve. So I've kind of reinvented that tradition.
Yes.
And now, they have a lot of holiday light displays. Some you can walk through, some you can drive through, et cetera, et cetera. So rather than do the national tree and the state trees anymore, so I pick a new destination holiday light display to go to each year, which is kind of a nod to what we used to do with a new twist, a fresh twist, because that's what works for me. And that's what makes me feel good.
Yeah.
Um, Going to do the national tree and the state trees, I haven't done it since he passed away, but I think that would be a hard one. We did it for probably 20 years
Yeah.
every year. And so that's just something that doesn't work for me. But, I still think about him when we go to the light displays
Yeah.
and I enjoy it. And, it becomes a happy memory for me.
Yeah, of course. And that's such a good point for both caregivers, widows, or anybody really finding themselves in a transitional period of any sort, that just because we've done it a certain way all along doesn't mean we just can't reinvent that a little, still
Yeah.
honor the memory of somebody, or still, you know, it might mean, you still have the holidays with your loved ones, like we did when my mom was alive and we were caring for her, but it's not at home and it's not in the warmth of your own house and things like that. And we have to be flexible, and yet it's hard to be flexible when we're going through this stress and that. But I think that, in my opinion, is why we have to let go of some of those things we do around the holidays, because we just can't overload ourselves anymore with stuff to do. We just have to honor memories, what we can do, and let that be enough.
Yeah, and I think it's important also to remember that what looks, what happens this year
Yeah.
may change next year. It's
Yes.
it's an evolving process.
Yes.
So one of the things that I do is I don't buy gifts.
Yep.
Um, Really, one, who really needs more stuff, you know?
Absolutely. Hmm.
And the types of things that people would probably really want or enjoy
Yeah.
have a price tag that is not feasible to buy for multiple people,
Right.
right? So the one thing I do now is I make an anonymous charitable donation
Oh,
in
that's
my
nice.
husband's memory
That's nice.
to organizations that he would have supported, his family supported in the past, et cetera, et cetera.
Yes.
And what you do this year may look completely different next year.
Absolutely.
And all of that's okay because it's about honoring you and what you're capable of,
Yeah.
what you're emotionally ready to handle or not. And it's okay to say no if it's not
Absolutely.
working.
Absolutely. And that being said, the word no, I like to talk to caregivers about, because um like, even being invited to someone's house or a party or something that maybe we don't have the capacity for, you might really want to do it, but you might not have the capacity. So we do have to remember that no is a word, no is an answer, no is okay. And during the holidays or not, and I know sometimes it's not your favorite word, because we sometimes are saying no to those things that we really want to be doing. But I think that point that you made, Beth, is that this year doesn't necessarily look like, isn't necessarily going to be what next year looks like. And where the caregiver is concerned, when we're in the throes of that, when we're in that season, next week might not look the same as today looks like, right? So we've got to give ourselves that grace. We give others grace as women to need to be themselves, but we don't often give ourselves that grace, or not to not do something the way we usually do or whatever. So I think I think that's important as well. Can you think of anything else we need to talk about as far as traditions are concerned in the holidays?
No, but I think, you know, the idea of giving yourself space and grace is a very important one. And it's something that, as you said, we give it to others, but we don't give it to ourselves. And it's okay to grant yourself permission to take that space and grace.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And on that note, shall we end our first episode, our inaugural episode of Between Two Beths?
Absolutely. Thank you all so much for being with us. We'd love to hear your feedback, your comments, suggestions, improvement areas. We're new to this, so we'll get better as we go. But thank you so much for joining us, and we hope you found this valuable.
Yes, I ditto that. Take care. We'll talk later, Beth. See you later.
Bye, Beth.
Bye bye.